Okay, all right, here we go. Let's go, guys. All right, let's get started. Thanks everybody for joining us. We're going to talk today about the future of virtual production in music, and we're going to highlight a specific project that we all have worked on over the last couple of months. And to kick things off, we'll do some intros. I'm Brad Spar. I head up the Sony Immersive Music Studios team here in LA. And Saul will introduce himself next.
I'm Saul Levitz. I work at Columbia Records across video and content. And I'm just really enamored with the new technologies that we bring to our music artists on the daily and new doors. So that's kind of my part here, is just that intro level and just getting this new stuff in front of our music artists. Passing to you, Anastasia.
I am Anastasia Delmark. I'm a film director, and I'm really into storytelling and changing the humankind 0.1% at a time.
Nice. My name is Tobias. I'm the head of software and technology at Innovation Studios, where I make sure things work for the production like this. And during the actual production, I was the virtual production supervisor, making sure Anastasia got everything she wanted.
I'm Iram Uygur. I'm the technical artist at Sony Innovation Studios. We're just trying to push the technology forward, and with this project, I helped with scene operation and just working with external art teams to get their scenes in their walls.
Good, thank you. So what we're going to do today is we're going to do a case study on a project we did with Columbia recording artist Aniko for a music video called Jericho that was just released last week. And it was the first time we utilized this technology from Sony Innovation Studios. It was a very exciting project. But Anastasia, maybe to kick us off, why was Aniko the right artist for this technology? Why was this project relevant for this?
This is the second time we worked with Aniko. Aniko is a very strong artist with really strong artistic core. And they came to me with this idea that was laid out in the form of a script that basically needed to be a movie. And we had only two directions we could go. It could be a green screen production or an XR virtual production. And of course, I love to make things like this in an immersive space where the artist can feel and act and fully absorb the environment. As well, we can go through the day easy. Everything is done in pre-production rather than in post, so I have a very dedicated, specific set of frames that we're shooting. And also, it just opens my hand as a creative, so that was an easy choice.
Good, good. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to show a quick 2-minute BTS of this production the day of the shoot, and then we're going to spend the rest of this discussion unpacking the whole project and what went into it and how it was put together. So let's go ahead and roll the video.
Let's do it. Okay, clearing up.
Okay, one more puff of haze and we're going to run it.
Yes. Okay, rolling. And ready. Action. Play back.
I'm from outer space. I got Milky Way for blood, evolution in my veins. I'm gone, I've been far away. I'm illuminated, I'll make a move, start the waves. I've been dreaming about flying for a long time. I had a vision from the praise they want a cosign. Artificially intelligent way. I'm your future, past and present. I'm a fine line. Yeah, I'm a missile of this illusion. I am not really here, I'm an intrusion. I don't swim or sink, I just float. I don't need gravity, I just need growth. When I move, it's in a quick rumble. I won't ever fall, never stumble. And I don't need to be humble. Break down walls like Jericho crumble. I could go higher, past the stratosphere. I can catch fire. I can go hard, I don't even need to try. Star blood, I don't ever get tired. Predestined, written in stone. I feel it coming in, I feel it in my bones. Heavily protected, never alone. Tapped in, I'm connected to the unknown. Oh, Jericho, Jericho, walls come down. Jericho, Jericho, walls come down. Walls come down like Jericho. Walls come down like Jericho.
So let's dive into this. There's a lot to digest in that video. Let's start with the Sony Innovation Studios LED volume. And Tobias, why don't you tell us a little bit more about this facility and its capabilities?
Yeah, sure. So we built this volume for creators and creatives to really, a space where they can realize their vision. So with that mindset, that kind of led into a lot of our decision making in everything we made there. And how we created it. So we use Sony panels, which are basically, the C-LED panels are color graded basically, so there's very high color accuracy. As you can see here, we have a lot of panels. And they make up about 12 UHD sections for the wall, 16 for the ceiling. So we have a lot of resolution we push. And what that gives us is we have a large shooting volume, but in a kind of compact space. And by that, I mean you can bring the camera closer to the LED wall without getting a lot of artifacts. And that gives the creatives more freedom to where they place camera, how they use it, and all that kind of things. And the other unique feature we have is that we use the same quality panels in the ceiling and the wall. It's 1.5 pixel pitch, meaning it's very high resolution. And what that gives us as well is that you can utilize the ceiling by shooting against it, not just as a lighting and kind of reflection device, but you can actually use it as you would in a more kind of a traditional shoot, as it were. And this is all to enable the creatives like yourself to get your vision going.
Good. All right. Thanks, Tobias. Well, let's talk a little bit about the creative vision. And for the next number of slides, we're going to cycle through some of the artwork that was created for the virtual environments that you see in the video. And you'll see some of the screen grabs of the 3D concept and then how that translated into the video itself. And but Anastasia, why don't you start us off with, you mentioned Aniko came with the script and sort of this movie idea. So what was the vision? What was describe this image that we're looking at here as a start?
So the whole video is a fiction story about a character who is born and who is looking for their second part, their darker side to unite, to collide, and to create their true self that not only affects themselves, but their whole environment around them. And basically, this is a classic story about merging yin and yang and bringing the unity together, and only after that, feeling yourself as your true self. And the whole story happens in this dystopian world. I'm an architect in my past life, my previous career, and that helped me to collect the right references and merge it kind of with Hong Kong vibes at the same time, Fifth Element, and brutalist architecture that comes from the kind of the Eastern Soviet Union times. Also, you can see like the cobwebs of the roads and intricate patterns of the highways that helps bring it all together. So the whole thing happens in this world.
And one of the things on this video is we're building these virtual environments. Your ability to creative direct and sort of change this look and have that creative freedom and flexibility. Can you talk a little bit about that as well?
It was amazing to work in pre-production with the Sony Innovation Studios and Sony Music Immersive Studio teams, because we were able to previs so precisely and make iterations of each set many times until I saw the image and I felt, wow, I'm in there. I'm in there, and I only could imagine what it would feel to be on set and see the final visuals that would come out. And that feels so great. And you can also place your characters in the shots, go very precise, and be super prepared for the day.
That's great. And cycling through a couple of other environments here, and being able to, when you think about building a set like that practically, it can get cost prohibitive or time prohibitive very quickly, and to be able to go into a combination of Maya and Unreal Engine and build a set like this quickly is really necessary for a music video project. And Saul, maybe you can talk a little bit when you see this, and then you see kind of the how it looked in the video. When you think about all the projects you work on day in and day out, so many videos that Columbia does, where does your mind go when you see these types of opportunities relative to sort of the way that you would normally shoot on, say, a physical set?
I think it's just an amazing tool to have, and also to just get in front of directors and our artists. Like Anastasia said, and Nico had and this is not this is a recurring theme with the artists in terms of the world building that they want to do. Like that image you show of the city, all these places seem like they're within that world. So we're kind of looking at this stuff almost as world building first, and text and stories. And this is kind of like the iteration of it, almost like a graphic novel or an animation. We're able to say, oh my God, this idea could be $2 billion, or it could be in your hands and easily adaptable using this engine and using the stage and being able to integrate live action. It just kind of opens that up. And I think it also lends itself to expansion and just ideas of what is around that corner. You can come back and revisit that, So I think it's really world building, and the artists, because they're coming from so much more, and their music is so visual, and they're influenced by gaming and they're influenced by animation, it's already part of the repertoire, and they're coming up with ideas for videos that are not ideas for videos, they're ideas for the world that the video lives in. So it's kind of I don't know, it's just such an amazing thing to have that I think it's an offering to our artists to be able to actually engage in this in a real level, whereas a few years ago it'd be how do I have the conversation? This is way too much to do. I don't want to have that conversation. I don't want to break the dream, But there is a door here now that we can take that some people, maybe whatever their impression is of the format may have had, but I think it's just kind of opening up. So that's what we're trying to do, is empower with all this stuff.
Yeah, and Anastasia, maybe talk a little bit when being able to take the artist to places they wouldn't otherwise be able to go.
Definitely.
Something like this, trying to find an actual location somewhere around the world, even if you found it, how do you get a crew there? How do you do this?
That would be completely impossible to scout all of these 5 places in the real world. I feel if you go in the realm of imagining the new world, this is the way to go, because your cards are all in your hands. But you need to know what you're doing. You need to answer questions precisely, because the Unreal Engine artists will ask you, what do you want? And you have to answer with details, with really intricate parts of this equation to put it all together and be able to put the story that actually works on screen. That is something to think about when you go into virtual production. But also it opens the world to you that you can create.
And what is that back and forth when you're looking at an image like this and you're iterating, you're providing some reference imagery, the artist is interpreting that, they're giving you this, they're modifying this, you're providing feedback. What's that dynamic? How's that go?
It's definitely a dance.
Yeah.
between the two entities and the time that we have to play and work together to bring it all. We usually would go on Zoom calls and share a screen and discuss every single detail that comes together. Should we bring the walls in? Does it look too much like Hong Kong or like Italy? Or let's add these brutally structures that came from the first white scene and marry the worlds together. And that conversation we had every single time, and there were multiple of those in the 5 weeks of pre-production that we had to achieve this result.
And maybe talk about this particular scene in the context of the overall storytelling
I
of the
think
video.
That scene is a very cool scene that connects the artist of the light to the artist of the darkness, and two characters, and this is the journey of the good guys to fight the bad guys. It happens in the canals of this dystopian universe, and on set we didn't have this huge pool of water there, no body of water except the tiny kiddie pool that the character had to interact with, so we would achieve the immersive feeling. Because when you shoot in virtual production, you need to make sure that your artist interacts with the environment. Otherwise, you won't be able to sell this idea. And there is an intro shot of the moon in this scene where Tobias had to move the whole moon here and there until we got the perfect shot with our DP, Josh Hill, and shoot it directly in it to create an illusion. That was great.
Yeah, this was a cool scene because you're seeing a reflection off the LED volume. And Tobias, maybe talk a little bit about the way that light and the way that when you obviously we have this little pool of water here, but that particular shot that you're achieving in real time.
Yeah, that's one of the beauties with a LED virtual production like this, is that we can have a moon scene all day, every day, so that we're not limited to time of day or location and these kind of things. But also we then have the freedom, like you were saying, we can move the moon wherever we want in the scene or in the virtual scene, so that it matches the actual practical setup and the shots that we want. And really, so how this came about is like Anastasia said, we had a tiny little kiddie pool with some water in it, and then there was a matter of moving the virtual scene so that the moon would line up with the reflection that Anastasia was after.
Yeah, it's great. And this is the last scene of the video, and also a lot of action in this scene too. So how many performers did you end up? We'll talk about this more in the shoot day, but where you had a scene with quite a few performers and handheld cameras and things. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. This performance had a choreographed fight and a lot of action, so the camera could actually go handheld. And with the Unreal Engine and virtual production, you can have a very seamless feeling and motion blur that is required for the fight scene to be shot well that we had. And that was really cool. As well as just having a super wide shot of the environment. I think the stage allowed us to do that because of the amount of the square feet this way and this way. And also, basically, the environment and the stage supported the possibility to shoot a wide shot of the fight scene.
Good. And here's a shot from the video we'll see in a little bit too.
Should also note a lot of the people that worked on the video are here in the audience. So if you guys have specific questions, ask the people here. Maybe you can raise your hands, but did an amazing job. Yeah.
So talking a little bit about the pre-production process and the optimization. And Iram, why don't you start us off as, so we're making these environments. We need to get them on the wall. We need to test them. We need to make sure that when the camera rolls, it looks correct and everything is operating, what's that dynamic as a technical artist, and what are the things that you're thinking about when we go through this process?
Yeah, so it's a different process when we build the scenes and now we put them on there. And when there's an external art team that create the scenes and they put it out there, we basically support them regarding what they need to do specifically to make the scene work well on our walls, which requires a very intricate reviewing process. So we have to be in touch, in constant communication. And if the external art team has never done virtual production before, there are specific things we have to tell them or give them guidelines about. In this project, for example, basically like what you see on the PC is much different than what you see on the LED wall. So that is a big challenge because most of these artists don't come to the stage, or they might come like once or twice. So we had to figure out ways to show them how it looks on the stage by like having Zoom calls and getting the footage of the camera to PC somehow and showing them how it looks. Because the color space of the PC is different than the LED screen, and the scale is completely different. Like they have to probably put on VR goggles to actually understand what the scale is like. So there's definitely a lot of back and forth with that. Other than that, obviously optimization is a big part of it, where like we use Unreal Engine, and for all the industries there are different optimization techniques and different things to optimize. And for us, one of the big deals we have is we have so much resolution on our wall, like you can't compare it to the PC you're working on. That's why they have to push forward with the resolution and optimize other stuff to make room for that, accommodate that. You always want that safe space to be there. That's one of them. And other than that, we use multi-GPU rendering, which is not what you see on your PC again. So that also requires more optimization. So yeah, definitely a lot of communication with that. Other than that, so pre-production is, like I feel like 90% of the job almost in this context, like when you compare it to conventional production, because there it's like pre-production and post-production are very similar. But here we have to work on the pre-production so much so that we don't have a hard time during production. So that's why naming conventions, the structure of the project, so that we can find the assets that we want to change during production is very important. Other than that, yeah, the external art teams were very excited to work with us, which was really fun.
And how about the dimensions of the stage? There's a ceiling. How do you sort of articulate to an artist to make it all format correctly? And how does the camera see that and stitch it all together? How do you prepare for that?
So yeah, there are like new virtual production tools coming up that we're trying to use, but it's always an experiment really, because the technology is going so fast. Like it's kind of cool that even for a project timeline, there are like new versions of software coming up and plugins, whatever, or the plugins we have to work on. So there's always that, like pushing the technology while still working on the same thing. Because of that, we have to like stay in communication all the time and show them as much as possible, really.
Yeah, it's great. Tobias, when you see the camera hit the wall and the ceiling, how does it know to put it together so that it looks correct on the actual video?
It's just pure magic, basically.
Just magic?
Just
yes.
magic. Easy. No, so basically around the stage, we have a bunch of tracking cameras. We use OptiTrack on our stage, and that keeps a track of position and orientation of the practical camera. And based on that, we basically project this onto the screen based on the viewpoint of the practical camera. So if you just go in there and you look at the wall with your eyes and the thing is moving, it's going to look very strange. It's going to look distorted. You can kind of see it in the images here. Like the ceiling looks all weird and distorted, but through the camera, it will always look correct through the tracking setup that we have.
Good. So let's talk a little bit about the day of the shoot. So this was all done in one day. It was a long day. So
Incredible.
Let's talk about the dynamic. Anastasia, maybe start us off that we have 6 environments that have to be captured. There's a practical set for these environments that have to be assembled and built and taken down, and there's a cast, there's dancers, there's choreographed fight scene, there's a Nico. How do you manage all of this in one day?
By miracle. Actually, a lot of pre-production was involved, and we had moving parts already on set 1-2 days before we went into actual filming. So on the day of filming, we had still to move the pieces from the location where we had all our production design on set, check how it all blends in, if we need to move some pieces in the real practical set, or we need to remove one box in the virtual set on change maybe a little bit here and there, so it seamlessly blends in. So that takes time. The good thing is on the lighting aspect, because our screens give us such a beautiful wrapping light around the character. We need just a little bit here and there to get some catch-eye light in the eyes, and that makes it so much better. If you need to add a flag, you can add it on screen. If you need to have some green screen patch, you can also add it there. So that makes it faster. But it was a really kind of an organic. We moved as an organism through it, all the teams, and definitely it was a communication between the art department, between me, between all the Unreal Engine parts, and between our production design. And this is how we made it happen. But it was a 15 long hours day, and we were all very tired and very happy by the end of it. Yeah.
And Tobias and Aram, on the, you see on the image on the right, we've got the environments up. They're being looked at on a PC. A lot of headsets, a lot of communication happening between everybody. What are you guys talking about? What's actually the communication dynamic between all of these people that you see in the pictures here?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. There's a lot of things going on a stage like this. There's all the technology behind it. Like I mentioned, the tracking cameras, the actual software to project the screens themselves. Of course, there's all the people then. We got the director, we got the scene operators. So there's a lot of things that needs to happen in a kind of a smooth way as possible. So the communication is really about what Anastasia wants. So it's all based on her direction, based on her needs. So we try to be on top of that constantly, kind of preempt what we may need. If there's a scene change coming soon, then we communicate that amongst our teams, like, hey, okay, scene's coming up in 5 minutes. So we are ready for that, so they can do the changes as necessary. There's a lot of communication with the DP in terms of lighting setup. What always happens is that we have a combination of practical lights like you would traditionally, and then you have the virtual lights, which is based on the scene, the virtual scene. And what always happens is that you want to tweak the virtual scene. You want to add on some light there to get whatever it is, some fill light or something. So the DP has a lot of requests for what he or she needs. So that's then communicated through the art team in that kind of sense. And that kind of goes back also to the pre-production in how important that is to also pre-visualize a lot of these things so that you can preempt a lot of that. So we know up front, like we met a couple of times before the actual shoot. We know what scene's going to come. We know roughly what lighting, what lens is going to be there. So we're prepped throughout the whole thing. So we know most of the changes that are coming, but there's always a little curveball. And Iram, maybe you can talk about some of the real-time changes that needs to happen.
Yeah, since we have this big sound stage, it's really hard to hear what's going on. That's why we have to have the little earplugs. And like basically we can change the lighting in real time, we can change the movements. And obviously like we can't pre-visualize everything with all the actors and props in it. That's why there's always that day of shoot dynamic where we have to work through that. And yeah, obviously asking about lunch is one of the communication parts.
Gotta eat.
Yeah, that's exciting always. But yeah.
You,
Your guys' team exceeded my expectations. I couldn't wish for better professionals on set, definitely.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, one thing I witnessed, which is kind of in the weeds of it all, but like the Unreal team kind of rescuing some of the physical production where, you know, this stage is immense and it's very inspiring to bring an artist there just to kind of wrap their head around the environment. Like you said, it affects the performance, but it's a lot of ground to cover when you're building a physical ground. And so, you know, you're kind of building the ground for the area that you want to shoot, but you're in there and you're like, oh my God, I have so much room to move. I want to move this way. But you ran out of sand or you ran out of whatever. So the immersive team's like, actually, we can like, in real time, kind of copy what that gradient is on the ground and just extend it. So it's not something you got to fix in post. And it's not something you got to worry about getting the right thing. But that was pretty cool. In addition to kind of like being able to have the power of the sun, the earth and the stars, like being able to really like kind of pick each other up was like really rad. And that speaks to like the flow you guys had going into it, so.
Yeah, it's definitely when you have a practical set blending into an LED wall and making that look believable and being able to be quick and make changes to the actual scene on the LED wall in real time can happen. You know, those types of things can happen on ideally that they don't happen because you've prepared for them, but if they do, that's why we have people there on the, you know, on the box that are able to make those changes in real time. And you had mentioned earlier about the moon, and you know, during the shoot, you identify, there's a shot you wanted. How did you get that shot? What was that communication like? Walk us through that story.
It was a communication between my DP, then Tobias, Iram, and we all were like wizards there trying to get this perfect angle for the camera on this anamorphic lens that is usually like longer in what it captures directly in the center of the pool. Plus, the water couldn't be moving, so we needed all to be super still. Nobody could step on stage because it would move the water. And then, on the count of 3, 3, 2, 1, the paddle goes through it. That was supposed to be the paddle that Eniko moves. Yeah, it took some orchestration, and we succeeded.
Yeah.
Iconic shot.
Yeah, definitely. And then as far as just to wrap up on the day of the shoot with Eniko and the cast, and you know, how did they respond to being surrounded by this big LED wall, and how helpful was that for them to understand what they wanted to do?
They were amazed. They were in awe, and that helped a lot because when people are excited to be on set, when they're excited to feel and to act in the environment, and they feel like they're contributing not only to the specific performance, but to the culture right now, that makes a big difference. And that helped a lot. And this is our second virtual production with Eniko, with the artist, and they felt a huge difference in the shift from the first project to the second one, because the first one was a tiny virtual production stage, and we moved to like a Mandalorian size of things for this music video, and they were like, oh my God. Yeah, so they were on the moon for that.
Yeah.